Wellness. I am your host today, Jamie Dorley, with my co-host, the one and only Joe Messina. Welcome back, Joe.
Welcome back. Hasn't
As,
been long.
as we sit here live at the World of Wellness, this is Wine and Wellness Week number 99.
Oh, I didn't make
Last time
100.
with double
The
digits. We're
centennial is
coming up right around the corner. So the Wine and Wellness Week, of course, is the legacy of the international icon, your mentor, my mentor, everyone's mentor, the one and only Dr. James Weiner. Doc was a pioneer in natural health and healing for over 50 years.
And medical freedom fighter.
Oh, yeah. And great thing with Doc was that he said a couple of classic famous quotes I always love. One is, the mind and the parachute work much better when they are open.
That's for sure.
And today we're going to be open-minded because we have some incredible new diagnostic technologies.
Yes.
The gentleman that's joining us today, James White, is the CEO of KBMO Diagnostics. He's so generous today with his time. I know he travels all over, and he's really on a similar mission as we are of making the world healthy. And it really goes into nicely not only we do at the World of Wellness, because now we can offer some really detailed testing, but also to bring out all of our great healthcare professionals out there. So let's give a nice warm welcome from the studio audience for James White. Welcome, James.
The
How we
crowd's
doing
going
today?
wild.
I was going to say, that was probably the response that I got when I was a New England Patriots player, because there was a famous New England Patriots player called James White. Probably not famous in Pittsburgh, but anyway, that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
Well,
famous for
thank you
knocking
so
us
much
out
for
of
that
the
kind
playoffs.
introduction. And I hadn't heard that quote before about the mind and the parachute, but I love that. So that's a classic.
Yeah, we sit here in Pittsburgh. It's really a medical community with University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. So it's been challenging over the years because people come in and they've been tested and their insurance and more testing. And, we always say rather than run for the cure, let's run for the cause, right? And the big four causes we know are nutritional deficiencies, stress, toxicity, and genetics. And the great thing about your testing is it gave me some really valuable information when I did the test, Joe. And I know you've experienced it for some other people too, right?
Oh, yeah, tremendously. They're finding the biggest thing is people find they're reacting to foods that they didn't know they were reacting
That
to.
they eat all the time,
That
right?
They eat all the time.
So we don't want to take up anyone's time. We're excited, James,
Yeah.
so we're going to let you jump right in, and
Perfect.
we're going to try and hold all of our comments to the end.
No, we'll just jump in whenever. It's fun to listen to you guys and kind of go backwards and forwards for sure. So thank you for that warm intro. Again, the neat thing with this testing is, we're looking at three different elements, and I think that's really helpful for kind of, providers and patients to kind of understand what might be going on from a food sensitivity standpoint. The classical IgG 1 through 4, you can get that online. But more importantly, what we've added is an inflammatory pathway, which we'll talk about, as well as now gut permeability, or for the listeners, leaky gut, kind of more commonly known as. So we'll talk about these three elements, but the nice thing is that's all in one test. And then more importantly, the exciting thing for me is we've now been able to roll in some really actionable evidence to go beyond that in terms from a supplemental standpoint, in terms of working with Nutritional Frontiers and the protocols that they pulled together. So we can go through some of that, and we can get, as we've got the two gentlemen on the line, they can go through some of those with us as well. So again, just to make sure we're all clear up front, what we're focusing on is food sensitivity versus allergy. Allergy is obviously instant reaction, IgE, bad things happen. Food sensitivity, it's more of a delayed response. So it can be delayed up to 72 hours. And that makes it much harder for a patient to work out what it is they might have consumed in the last 72 hours, which are causing them the symptom. As I say,
Most
with
people don't know
allergy,
what
it's
they
an
consumed
instant
in the last
response.
24
That delay
hours,
makes
right?
it much more complicated for a patient to remember what they were consuming, and let alone kind of then link that back. The other issue with sensitivities is the symptoms are many and varied. And so we've got just over 5,000 providers running the test these days. And I'm often asking them, what's a good patient to run this test on? And again, the nice thing with this is, it's many and varied. But again, what we really think of, if you look at all these kind of long lists of symptoms, clearly digestive and gut related are the obvious things to think about. But there's skin problems, fatigue, migraines, autoimmune, weight loss in particular, another good one. And what we found, it's really interesting, about 10 years ago, we did some kind of seminal research in terms of how well this test works. And when we looked at the symptoms that we'd kind of greatly improved on for the 50 patients that we tested on day one, then 10 months later, a lot of them were things like migraines, brain fog, depression, and things that we didn't necessarily think would be linked with gut. But obviously, if you roll that forward now 10 years, maybe we didn't have the courage of our convictions 10 years ago to go, looks like there's a pretty strong link here between healthy gut and healthy brain, or leaky gut and leaky brain. And so I think, obviously, 10 years rolled on, that seminal research is well understood. And I think, you won't get, we even deal with a lot of psychiatric providers now who understand that link. And so I think it's really powerful that, again, if you think about that gut health, looking to improve that, as we all know, the 70% of your immune system is in your gut. So again, many benefits of looking at understanding what might be some of the underlying causes of gut health linked in to food sensitivities. So again, that's the when. The why, again, most of the providers that we work with, again, they like the fact that that inflammation that's associated with foods is an underlying problem for many of the conditions. And again, I've had the fortune of seeing Jamie talk a number of times, and he's big on root causes. And again, I think that's the key here. This is another test that helps you look at what might be that kind of root cause, what's underlying all that long list of symptoms we talked about earlier. And so again, coming back to when should a provider use this test, if you've got an inflamed patient, the great thing about this test, it's going to help you identify which foods are causing that inflammation. By eliminating those foods, that overall level of inflammation comes down, and more importantly, you'll see a cessation or a great reduction in those symptoms that they were presenting with.
James, quick
Now,
question on this.
Sorry, Jamie.
A lot of people ask, well, why me? Why now? Do you find in your experience this is something where the person's been consuming this for a long period of time and their body has now become intolerant? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I think there's certainly going to be a bit of a topping up element in terms of, it's suddenly, I think there's a number of factors come into it. At some point, patients are, we've all, what's your normal, as they say, the things that patients will put up with, whether it's kind of, IBS type symptoms or whatever, they get to a tipping point and go, I need to understand what is the underlying cause of this. To your point, is it you're eating that food too much? It's probably stress. It's a whole number of factors that you listed up front. But let's look at from the diet, are any of those foods actually causing or actually exacerbating the problem? And that's the neat thing with this test. If we can identify what that might be, like we did with you, Jamie, then by reducing that inflammation comes down and the symptomology that you were presenting with came down in terms of, I remember in your case, it was a psoriasis you talked about. So I think it's really interesting that yes, there may well be, you suddenly reach that point, but it varies from patient to patient. So some people might be going, I'm looking for that last 10% of wellness or health I'm trying to get to. Other people might be going, post-pandemic, I really need to reset my health. And this is a great tool that enables you to look at your overall health via your inflammation and your food. And the great thing about looking at your diet is we are all aware of what we're eating in some regards. So to be tested on that's a great thing to then identify which of the foods that you're consuming are leading to that level of inflammation. And with this chart here that I just brought up, it kind of helps kind of demonstrate that. So what we're doing with the test that we've developed, and it's the only patented food sensitivity test on the market, we're looking at the two elements or kind of multiple pathways. So you've got the IgG 1 through 4, which is a classical thing that lots of people look at. The downside of just stopping at that point is you're only really measuring exposure to a food. So by going on and measuring the complement at the same time, what you end up doing is doing an additional screen, which takes out what we would describe as the false positives, i.e. that long list of foods, and identifying of that long list, which ones are causing inflammation. And that's what really correlates well with the symptoms. And so really what we're doing is really zeroing in generally 5 to 15 foods per patient. So it's then not overwhelming when you start thinking of it from a compliance standpoint. So again, it's that multiple pathway approach where we're looking at not only the acquired immunity, but also the downstream innate immunity. And that really sets us apart from other tests on the marketplace. We're showing it here on a slightly different format. On the left-hand side, you've got the IgG only. On the right, you have our patented approach of the multiple pathways of the innate and the acquired. So again, these two different parts of your immune system, which enables us, as I mentioned before, to be really specific and zero in on the key foods of interest, which is really what we're after.
Yeah, for me personally, I have a couple actually food allergies like shellfish, and they did show up on my list.
Interesting.
Do you find that the food allergies also show up on the list?
Sometimes they do, but often not, because you're looking at something quite different. In your case, maybe because they're inflamed, again, that brings it up. So again, it's interesting to see that it's that inflammatory pathway. And so again, if you've had some exposure, then yeah, it will definitely come up, and that may be common, but not always. And so generally, we'd almost say the opposite in some regards, Jim. We'd say, look, if you're allergic to something, that's different from a sensitivity, because you're looking at the IgE pathway versus the IgG.
Yeah, that's what I was asking, because I was curious to see if that would come up, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, it didn't come up as my top red zone. It came in a lower level. So
Yeah.
I guess it is, creating some inflammation.
Yeah.
But testing on IgG, it's not going to show as it will with the IgA. Interesting points. Thank you.
And again, it's definitely worth thinking about that from a provider standpoint. If a patient comes in and says, look, I'm highly allergic to a number of these things, what we strongly say is, well, you can't reintroduce those foods just because they didn't come up on a sensitivity test. This is looking at sensitivities and inflammation and gut health versus looking at straight IgE, which is what the allergist does in terms of his pinprick testing. So again, the neat thing is we're set up by a guy called Dr. Brent Dorval, who works very closely with me still together. Today, we've got just over 20,000 square feet here in Boston. Again, we've got a number of facilities. So we've got two clear high complexity labs. We have an ISO certified and FDA registered manufacturing facility up here now. And so again, it enables us to control the whole value chain. So we start from the foods, which are all organic and which we lay down on the plates. And so we know where they're all sourced from. And we've developed specific lyophilization technologies for that. And then that enables us as well with the patent to make sure that we control the whole system down to with the clear high complexity labs. The other neat thing that providers really like is that we've developed this so it's a finger stick, not just a blood draw. So again, with the finger stick, that enables us to send the kits, drop ship the kits to the patients at home if they're not coming into the office, or if you've got a practice where you've got patients coming from long distances. Again, we can mail them directly to the patient. The kits come with a stamped address envelope, so they just need to put it back in their mailbox. But more importantly for the providers, the results go directly to the provider versus the patient. And now with that finger stick technology that we developed, we've got samples coming in for us from all around the world. So it's a nice opportunity that we have.
So is the finger stick or the blood draw equally as effective?
Equal as effective. There was a great paper that was published, and we've sent out to lots of people now from the NIH, showing how well that they kind of match. So it's a great thing now that paper's out there. And again, as we all know, it's one thing for James or Jamie to say that we've got great companies and great products. It's better when the NIH can stand up and say it's exactly the same or very equivalent in terms of the finger stick and the blood draw.
Is there any age restriction? Is equally effective on children?
Yeah, so generally what we say is you can still run it on children below the age of 2, but generally the immune system isn't fully formed below 2. Right. So you'll be getting more of an IgG versus the complement as well. But you'll definitely get a response. And again, we found that's pretty helpful for young kids as well.
Toddlers to preteens, it's all great. Works fine with them. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. So on this slide, we're just showing really that we've got these 3 panels. So we have the Fit 22, the 132, and the 176. So the numbers are the number of foods, colorings, and additives we're measuring. The 132 and the 176 also includes our gut barrier panel, which we'll talk a little bit more about as we go through. As I say, one of the big benefits of this test is we're looking at those colorings and additives. And again, they're in processed foods, they're in some supplements, and they're in personal hygiene products. And in fact, when I was down at the great meeting that Jamie held in Pittsburgh over the summer, one of the providers came up to me and said, I had a patient that came up for benzoic acid. And again, I'd have never considered benzoic acid as something to tell them to take their child off. Turns out it was in their personal hygiene products. It was in the soap. It was in the shampoo. It was in kind of some of the creams they were giving them. When they took those out, there was a dramatic improvement in the symptoms that child was presenting with. So again, based on that, she's now going to run the test on all her patients, because she was thinking before, classically, you'd go, well, I'll take out maybe the eggs, the wheat, and the milk. But here she said, I'd have never got to the benzoic acid, which was highlighted as one of the red foods. So again, if you look at this report here, again, it's intentionally really straightforward. So there's 3 pages. The front page shows you the foods you need to eliminate. Second page here just shows it by grouping. So dairy, eggs, grains, the colorings and additives are up here as well. And so again, the idea is if it's red, obviously you're going to eliminate it, orange, yellow, and maybe some of the light greens as well. So again, it gives you an easy for a patient and provider to see what might be going on this report.
So James, now most people would not even think of benzoic acid as a food sensitivity. So this is there other components like that? This goes way beyond just your basic food groups.
Absolutely. And so that's with these colorings and additives, it's really looking at, and again, it's, if everyone was growing their own and eating their own food, then we probably wouldn't be in business. The reality is we're all living busy lives. We're all eating processed foods, eating out a lot. And that's where all these colorings and additives come in. And so that's the key, is that, we're measuring that to see what impact they're having on your body. And again, those colorings and additives have also been linked with the number of studies now linking them with leaky gut as well. And that's one of the reasons we added them to the panel, to see it's not just the classical things that you think you're eating, it's the other things, that it's that whole really studying closely the ingredients lists that you see on packets or processed food to understand really what you are consuming.
Do all 3 of the test levels have those ingredients?
So they're on the 132 and the 176, and on the Fit 22 we just measure the candida. We don't also measure all those colorings and additives. So on here it's the foods in yellow. So you've got the peanuts and things like that, but not. And we do brewer's yeast on there as well, but we're not doing as many of the colorings and additives that we have on the Fit 22.
Okay.
All right. So the other nice thing that we do with the 132 and the 176 is we provide the patients a 7-day meal plan, and that's individualized based on their test results. And we've got a team of meal planners that pull these together. And the neat thing is, as you guys will find, as you start running more of the tests in your center there, what happens is patients get the report back and they go, okay, so what can I eat now? And so the good news is you can give them the meal plan, and that gives them a path forward so they can take control and ownership of their kind of health. So they're not just going, oh my God, I got these results, I don't know how to interpret them. The idea is to make them easy to interpret. What do I now do? You've got a meal plan. And then the other nice thing is we've also developed a phone app. So on that app, they get their full test results so they can see which foods they're sensitive to. Because again, we're all guilty of it. We've been in to see a provider. They kind of give us a whole load of test results. We're slightly deer in the headlights, and I can't really remember which one they were talking about. So by putting it on their phone, we hope that gives them a way of being able to follow that and refer back to that. We only send the patient the results generally 14 days after the results have got to the provider. So that way, you guys have got the provider has an opportunity to review the results with the patient, hopefully put them on some supplements as well, and then help look them to kind of move forward. The other nice thing about the app is the meal plans on there. So if you're grocery shopping, you've got it as well. And the other great thing about the app is patients love to share it with their friends and family. So they bring out the app and they feel very confident and comfortable about talking about the results because it's color-coded, easy to understand. And generally, as I always say, most people aren't happy to tell their friends they've got high cholesterol, they're pretty happy to explain these results because it shows that they're proactively taking control of their health by saying, look, I went the extra mile. I wanted to see which foods are causing me inflammation and which ones aren't. I want to make sure I've got good immune health linked to what I'm eating versus thinking they have to be reliant on other things. So that's one thing that I think all the practices I've spoken to about the test have really loved, the fact that generally you get one family member runs the test, before you know it, you've got 2 or 3 others kind of trooping in behind them because they want to find out this information, and that kind of goes with friends and family as well. So again, in terms of the products that we've developed, we've got the Fit 176, the gut barrier panel, which I'll talk about today as well. So the 176, we've added these foods. The neat thing is we worked with over 250 providers to kind of pull this list together. And so some of the highlights are the addition of some of these ancient grains. We've got some of these sweeteners on here, so monk fruit and stevia. Again, we've added the 3 main ingredients of omega-3, so anchovy, mackerel, and sardine, given that, again, a lot of these patients are inflamed, so that's a natural go-to for a lot of providers. So let's check to make sure that they're not sensitive to those. In fact, I had a provider a couple of months ago who only had a couple of foods elevated, and one of them was sardine, and he was like, he said, I've never eaten a sardine in my life. And so I said to him, is there any chance that you're on an omega-3? He said, how do you know? I said, well, that's one of the main ingredients. So again, we've given some thought to make sure that we're linking in with supplements to make sure that we want to make sure you're on good supplements, hence why we're working with the Nutritional Frontiers. But on top of that, we're looking to make sure some of those key ingredients aren't triggers for you. And if they are, the guys have got plenty of other good products that can look at bringing down your inflammation. We're also looking at CBD as well.
That, James.
Yeah.
So normally when someone says they're allergic to a fish, it's to the protein. In an omega-3, it's just the fatty acids, but that's still showing up on this test.
Yeah. So
it's not a full-blown allergic reaction. It's just a sensitivity.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Great question. So again, that leads us into the kind of the food sensitivities or leaky gut, or kind of which came first, the classical chicken or egg. And I remember when I was first kind of selling the testing, probably 10 years or so ago, I was traipsing the streets of New Hampshire, talking to naturopaths and providers up there. And one of the questions that stuck in my mind was when we were telling them about the food sensitivity and the fact that it's patented and we were looking at inflammation, they were like going, hold on, we don't do food sensitivity testing. We think that a lot of our patients have leaky gut, so we treat them accordingly. And that stuck in my mind. I was like, what do you mean you think? And I said, you're testing for that? No, we think that they've got leaky gut. So on that basis, we thought, well, why don't we, rather than guessing to see whether the patient has leaky gut or not, let's combine that with the food sensitivity. And that was the kind of brainchild or thought that provoked us to go, why don't we look at leaky gut as well as food sensitivities, given that, they're pretty inextricably linked. And again, if you think about leaky gut or kind of gut barrier panel, anything, it's a continuum. It's not just a single marker that will kind of be elevated, which kind of makes it easy for you to look at. So what we kind of came up with was a panel that included Candida, zonulin, and occludin. So Candida is a great marker of kind of some level of dysbiosis going on. Zonulin is looking at those tight junctions and really seeing how well they're functioning. And again, if they're elevated, the great news is they can come back into a normal range in terms of with treatment. We'll talk about some of the treatments after this. And occludin is looking more at the structure of those tight junctions. So the idea was to kind of give it a bit of a coverage from a gut barrier perspective. The other thing we did is we also added the IgA. Given that's a secretory marker linked very closely with the kind of gut barrier, we thought, let's make sure we add that at the same time to give us a really good coverage. And what I found really fascinating is we tested a provider back in May, and I tested her again after we'd introduced this. And she came up, interestingly enough, when we first tested her, when we used to just look at Candida and zonulin, the IgG and complement, she was negative for both of these. But when we retested her, she was positive for occludin and positive for Candida IgA. And she said, that makes more sense, James. She said, because I've definitely got some kind of symptomology of leaky gut. And so again, made me feel good that having had these 6 markers on there now, it gives us a much better chance of working out, does that patient, or in that case, provider, have some kind of leaky gut going on. So just a quick note on the zonulin test that we developed there. We worked for about 4 years with a combination of Dr. Alessio Fasano kind of consulting and Dr. Brent Dorval, our kind of technical founder, looking at the test and coming up with the best test that we could for zonulin. Given the current ones, they were cross-reacting with haptoglobin, properdin, and various complement fragments. So we thought, well, let's come up with a test that doesn't have that blocking going on, has a much better positivity rate, given that we're working with a skewed population generally. If they're coming to see providers, there's a likelihood that they may well have some kind of leaky gut going on. Fasano, in the paper that he had published in the Lancet in early 2000s, talked about 25%. I think we're in the kind of 15 to 20% range in terms of the data we're seeing currently. And again, that's based on this unique recombinant zonulin protein that we developed, which enables us not to have that blocking, gives us that high level of positivity, and it's on our ELISA plate as well, which enables us to run it at the same time as our FIT 132 and 176. So it's been a really nice addition, but based on some really solid science. Like, we're the only company with a patented food sensitivity. So again, we didn't want to just half-ass a zonulin test. We wanted to make sure it was the best one available, and that's what we've done by working with the best people in terms of Fasano and Dorval, and then coming up with a test that dealt with some of the issues that people were seeing out in the marketplace with zonulin, and it not really correlating well with clinical symptomology that was going on.
All this from a single drop of blood.
All this from 5 spots of blood on a card. So pretty easy to do. Jamie, in fact, did it actually at a trade show. So again, he came in and into the booth, and we had one of our providers not test him on the spot, but certainly take the sample there, and that's proved really helpful in terms of to kind of move the process on, as in fact we did with some of your staff when we were in Pittsburgh at the recent Nutritional Frontiers meeting. So the new report looks a bit like this, which is, it's got 3 pages. The front page, as I mentioned before, is the foods that you need to eliminate. Second page gives you the Manhattan in terms of what's going on from an inflammation standpoint. And the third page gives you your gut barrier panel. And so that gives you an ability of saying, what's going on from the Candida, zonulin, and the Cludin. There's a brief description of what we're testing for, and then a bit more about the Candida, the zonulin, and the Cludin. And then more importantly, there's a kind of gut barrier panel interpretation. So what we believe is, if any of those 6 markers are positive, we recommend to consult your provider with regards a good gut healing protocol. And that's really Q, the Nutritional Frontier protocols that literally is hot off the press. It got to me late yesterday. So what we're trying to do now is combine the 2 things. So what you've got here is, if there's nothing going on here, no problem. Let's focus on the inflammation. If there's gut healing required, let's talk about that. So again, the nice thing is, Jamie and his team have come up with again, a gut barrier panel. So again, here is the list of things that you need to think about from a gut barrier protocol. If nothing's going on there, again, smart guys that they are, they've come up with a food sensitivity and inflammation protocol. So I think what I've heard already feedback from providers is they love the fact it's straightforward. It's A, B, or a combination of the 2. And that's the great thing about working with someone like Nutritional Frontiers. They've got the skill set to come up with these panels, which make it the provider's job much, much simpler. They run the test, and then it leads to some really cool treatments that have already been developed and are well-trodden paths that the patient and provider can then kind of move seamlessly into, but in a straightforward way, which I think the patient really is going to understand and kind of like the idea of going, oh my God, so what do I have to do if I've got inflammation? You take out the foods, you look at the food elimination, the diet that they pulled together, and here's a protocol that you can look at. If you've got gut healing going on, or that gut barrier is elevated, perfect. Here's the primary supplement support. Jamie, do you want to say a few words about the 2 protocols?
Well, Jamie's helping some people right now, but Jamie and I worked on these protocols together, And that was the goal, was to try and keep them as simple as possible, the fewest amount of products possible, but a vital protocol. That was the key. We wanted to provide each patient with a protocol, not a product.
Yeah.
Okay, so that makes the difference. So what we've done is we've addressed the major components. You remove the toxicity, you then relieve the deficiencies that are required to help your gut heal. Now, these are nutrients that are really based on healing, replenishing, fortifying the gut. And those are three separate categories, but they're all included in these protocols. So it gives them a real step-by-step, easy protocol to do. It's not going to break anybody's bank, but these products and these protocols are designed to heal the mucosa, to heal the lining, to remove bacteria, and to then fortify and help you to assimilate the nutrients that you are taking in based on the food plan.
And to be honest, talking from a diagnostic standpoint, I think that's always been a bit of a missing link, because I think providers either get the supplement end or they get the diagnostic end. What I'm hoping to do now is, by combining those two together, it gives them a much clearer pathway of how to treat patients. And I think that's the neat thing here is we've got great tools from a diagnostic standpoint. It's always a bit of a so what. And so the neat thing now is, rather than going, well, so what, we go, well, here's what you do. You look at the app, you look at the meal plan, and here's the protocols that you can follow to make sure that, you're going a kind of belt and braces approach to make sure that, this patient has a really good chance of being successful in terms of by eliminating the foods and looking to heal the gut, which I think is a huge step forward. And that's why I'm excited to be talking about these today.
Mm-hmm. And these protocols follow our primary gut protocols. It's always a matter of healing, replenishing, and then assisting the body to assimilate the nutrients. So, what we didn't have before was the discovery of which ones were causing the problem in the first place. Now we have
exactly. And I think providers are going to be excited because, as you say, they had one or the other. They didn't have the combo.
Right.
And I think that's the great thing now. It kind of, for a lot of patients, you'd like to think they go to a provider and the provider will be able to kind of help them out. The nice thing is, you say, you've got the discovery and now the kind of the treatment protocols, which I think will be really helpful in terms of as they improve, and hopefully we'll see improved patient outcomes, which is what we're all looking for anyway.
Exactly.
So again, just in conclusion, again, it's a patented multi-pathway detection technology. We're not just looking at what you're exposed to. We're going on finding out, which foods are causing inflammation, and equally, do you have leaky gut or not? Again, we've tried to put in place, some really good compliance tools, from an easy to read report. Some poor providers sent me a 74-page food sensitivity report the other day. We've put a meal plan in place. So again, the patient knows what to do. They've got the app, and now, really excitingly, they've got the protocols to follow as well, which I think will be a great step forward in terms as they go forward. We've done another number of clinical studies already, and I think for me, the next step is we're going to look to do more clinical studies now that we've got our gut barrier panel, as well as partnering with Nutritional Frontiers to see what's a great study we can do to kind of prove that this combination will improve patient outcomes, which is what we're all trying to do anyway. And again,
that's the bottom line. That's what we're after, and we have to have the tools, like you said.
Exactly.
Everything was a piece of the puzzle, and now we're just making it more complete and eliminating the guesswork. Yeah, and I think that's what's happening, especially with a lot of of the physicians out there that are not well schooled in the nutritional pathways, functional medicine pathways. They don't know where to go. There's a lot of question marks, but this answers those questions, fills in the gaps, and gets the results. Exactly. This is great stuff. Really good stuff, James. We love it.
Well, thank you very much, Steve, for your time. If there's any questions, happy to take any. But I know you and I, we've kind of been going through some as we go on. But if there's any others, happy to take them.
Any other questions, Phil? No, not right now.
Perfect.
But,
and I guess the key to finish with is, obviously, this testing is now available through obviously KBMO and Nutritional Frontiers, and again, any providers.
Yes.
And what the wellness world. Yeah, if there's anything we can do, we're happy to provide information. Whether that's on those protocols or on the testing. So feel free to contact either one of us.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. And
Yes,
where are
sir.
you right now, James? You said you're in Boston?
Yeah, I'm in Boston. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
good.
and
Long as you're not in
I
Florida.
guess wish everyone well in Florida. They're obviously
Yes,
had a pretty
we
tough
absolutely.
24, 48 hours,
We have
and so
several. We
we
have
wish them
several of
well.
our reps and colleagues down there, and of course, a lot of our Nutritional Frontiers family
Yeah.
and customers down there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're keeping a close eye on it.
Good.
Well,
All right,
thanks
guys.
so much, James. This has been
My
great.
pleasure. Well, thanks again for your time. Much appreciated.
All right, we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Will do.
Well, there you have it. Am I still on? All right, I'm still on. There you have it. The big round of applause that we always save for the end. But coming up at 1 o'clock, the demo today is the man, the energy response technician extraordinaire, Mr. Who is it, Phil? Jeffrey Nisnik. Everybody knows his name. Yep, Jeff Nisnik. He's here. He's already helping people, but he's going to be here doing some demos on muscle testing right for you. So stay tuned. He'll be here at 1 o'clock. We'll see you then. Live long and prosper.